morning, Governor Richardson. My name is Linda, and I am in Roswell, New Mexico. And I would like to ask you, sir, what are you going to do about the veterans' care? Veterans' care here in New Mexico, like in Artesia, has been very bad, and I know all over the country, and the boys coming back from Iraq. What is going to happen with that if you make it for president, which I hope you do?
Well, thank you very much. The first initiative I would take is, if you recall, in New Mexico, we found out that our National Guardsmen had a death benefit, about $11,000. Well, at the state level in New Mexico became the first state through my leadership to give every one of our National Guardsmen a $400,000 life insurance policy, because I think the death benefit was abominable coming from the federal government. I believe we have a huge obligation to our veterans, especially those that are coming back right now from Iraq and Afghanistan. I've noted dramatic increases in post-traumatic stress syndrome. I've got a bill in the legislature to try to deal with more treatment. But just on a federal scale, I would upgrade the funding for the veterans' benefits. I would make sure our veterans' facilities nationally, the hospitals, the clinics for Vietnam veterans, mental health, would be dramatically increased in terms of funding. I believe that's a commitment we must have to our veterans. I've been reading these stories here in Washington, D.C. about the treatment of our recently returned veterans in the hospitals locally here, the lack of treatment, the lack of attention. I think that's below the nation's dignity to treat our veterans in a way that they're kind of ignored. I'm not saying all of them are, but I just read these stories in the Washington Post recently about this treatment. So this would be a pro-veteran president. I would be sure that issues relating to health, issues relating to compensation, and also the availability of getting jobs for veterans when they return, housing. But what really worries me about this war is post-traumatic syndrome, men and women returning. And we need to have more treatment. We need to have more education. We need to find ways to let our veterans know that we're behind them when they return.
Governor Richardson is serving in his second term as governor, reelected in November of '06 with 69% of the voters, representing the largest margin of victory for any governor in his state's history. He first became governor in 2003. Next call comes from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, on our line for Republicans. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Governor Richardson.
Good morning.
I would like to ask you two questions coming from something you said a few moments ago about the oil distribution into the Iraqi three people groups, so to speak. How could that be truly implemented for the anger they have towards one another and all the fighting, the hate? It sounds like a very long process, and then you have the other countries neighboring who are helping, and we don't want that oil revenue to get into their pockets either for their items that they want to spend on. And also, can you comment about the oil that has been found in the shale or slate in the Colorado mountains and the process in which it goes through to produce oil for the United States, for ourselves?
Well, those are two excellent questions. What I outlined to you, sir, and on the reconciliation of the three religious and ethnic groups would be tough, but I believe it deserves a chance. I believe that with U.S. leadership, with U.S. saying to the Sunnis, the Kurds, the Shia, you have to get along. And if we are going to withdraw, and I'm not making this contingent, however, the leverage of a withdrawal would serve as a great, great push to get the three to form a coalition government, to share in power, to share the oil revenues, to share the cabinet ministries. Interior goes to this group, energy goes to this group, and then possibly to divide up, like the Dayton Accords, the country into three confederations headed by an Iraqi federal government. I think that has to happen because you don't want to break up the country. But then you guarantee that security and that framework, and you guarantee perhaps reconstruction assistance by another group of countries that the United States brings in. Saudi Arabia with massive resources, Egypt, Turkey, other Muslim countries with juice and clout and strength. Then you have to invite Iran and Syria. I believe Iran and Syria don't want instability in the region, and that is the hook that you use for them. And you say, if you're going to participate in a peaceful Middle East, a more stabilized Middle East, there has to be a cessation of hostilities, and we all have to participate in a process. It's not going to be easy, but if we don't try, if we just add more troops, we add fuel to the fire, we have more sectarian conflict, that's going to hurt us. On the second issue, we have to find ways to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. And I believe the future is renewable energy, renewable technology, and the way you do that is not little energy bills or little projects here and there in Colorado. What you do is a massive, massive man-on-the-moon project that shifts from 65% to 10% in 10 years. 65% imported oil, go down to 10, but shift from fossil fuels to renewable technologies, to solar, wind, biomass, distributed generation. I think we have to be more fuel efficient. We have to conserve better. We have to find ways to promote incentives for green buildings and green schools and retrofitting homes. And I believe there'll be a lot of new jobs there. But right now, our energy situation is untenable. 65% imported oil, countries that are not friendly to us, an oil shock. So I worry about that. So I think you're in the right direction of thinking of alternatives. On that Colorado shale project, I want to see the environmental safeguards that I think are essential for a project like that to be successful.
In the Washington Post this morning, the headline, governors are seeking more money for children's insurance. Governors from both parties appealed yesterday for the Bush administration and Congress to provide more money for a health care program that insures millions of children. Where are you in this debate, sir?
Well, I'm with the governors, and if you notice, it's governors. It's not just Democrats, it's Republicans and Democrats. What's happened is because the federal government, when it comes to Medicare and Medicaid, is once again saying we don't have enough money, you states are on your own, and it's leaving us with some very, very bad options because our own state budgets are strained in so many other areas. I support the increase in children's insurance. I think our first obligation, if we're going to have a national health care plan, is insure all children, especially those under 5, in areas like mine that are high poverty regions. So that basically means increases in S-CHIP funds. That means increases basically in Medicaid, which, as you know, is funds that go for children, for seniors, for the disabled, that is administered by the states. And we're going to hold a meeting, the governors, this morning with President Bush, and that will be one of the main messages. And the message is stop reducing funds for Medicaid. This is basic health care. And every year since I've been a governor, I'm entering my 5th, there's a reduction from the Congress, from the federal government. And so we're just saying, federal government, do your share, but also give us as states the flexibility with waivers to have public-private partnerships to account for the shortfalls that you're providing us. You keep cutting our funds. It's a federal obligation, but we got to insure kids. We got to find ways that kids, they have no lobbyists. Kids have no agenda except we want to preserve them for the future.
Next up is Amherst, Massachusetts, on our line for independence. Good morning.